What is up, everyone? Aeneas here. We're back for the number 3 of the top 5 new brews for MTGONE, or for XTO all will be one. And today we've got a pretty interesting brew. You might love it, you might hate it. Depends how much you already hate the Azorius soldiers on the ladder. But this time we've got kind of a blue-white affinity aggro style deck. It plays out a lot like the Elves do in Historic, like the mono green Elves and stuff like that. So yeah, let's take a look at it. Let's look at the cards and see what makes it work. All right, so I think the key cards for this are Urza, Prince of Krug. This is one we got from the last set that says artifact creatures get +2/+2. And we also just got this new one, Unctus, Grand Meteffect. Okay, I don't think that's a real word. So Meteffect. So it's a 1 blue 2/4, and it says other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll zoom in a little bit. Maybe that makes it easier to read. So it has other abilities, like if your blue creatures become tapped, then you can draw a card and discard a card. So it gives you filtering, which is nice. But the key thing we want is the artifact creatures get +1/+1. So it's a lord for our artifacts. And then Urza is a lord as well, but like a super lord, I guess, because it's +2/+2. So that's really powerful. And yeah, then we just have a lot of really good artifact synergies going on with all the creatures. And even some like affinity type spells. So for our 1-drops, we have the Swooping Lookout. It's a 1 mana 1/2 flying and vigilance, so it has evasion. 1 mana for a flyer is always like kind of decent. So this one has vigilance as well, which is nice. And since it's an artifact, we're gonna have a lot of synergies with that, and it will also get buffed by our lords, of course. Other than that, for 1-drops, we have the new legendary creature Skrelv, Defector Might. It's a 1 mana 1/1, 1 white mana for Toxic 1. This creature can't block, and then you can also pay 2 life and tap it to give another creature Toxic 1 and Hexproof from a certain color, and also it can't be blocked by creatures of that color. So if you're facing, I don't know, mono white or mono black or something, you can use this as like a protection from the removal, or to make it so that they can't be blocked, something like that. So that's going to be very handy for some of the other cards like Patchwork Automaton, which is going to get really big, and then we want to give it can't be blocked so it can swing in for a lot of damage. All right, the last 1-drop we got is the Yotian Frontliner. This has just kind of proved itself as pretty reliable in the Soldiers deck, and the +1/+1 it gives doesn't say only to soldiers, so it works in this deck as well. Also, the Unearth is very nice for kind of late game when we want to have a little bit more gas and a little bit more triggers for our artifact stuff. So I can see it being very good in this deck as well. All right, and then the 2-drops. So if you've played Elves in Historic, there's 2 kind of key things that keep your Elves deck doing well, or maybe 3. But one of them is tapping for mana. So we have this 2 mana creature, Toxic 1, that taps for mana of any color. Yes, it costs 2 life, but when you're in the aggro deck, your life doesn't matter as much in a lot of cases. So getting this down on 2, and then potentially getting out a 4 mana like an Urza right after that could be very huge for the deck. Even if you wait till like turn 3 or something, yeah, it could be the difference between winning and losing, having that extra mana. So I think it's going to be very helpful to have that in here, and it's an artifact, so it synergizes pretty well with the deck. We also have, as I mentioned, Patchwork Automaton. So Patchwork Automaton, whenever you cast an artifact spell, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and it has Ward 2, so it's hard to kill. And since we have so many 1-drops, we can pretty quickly like pump this creature up very large and have it be hard to remove early on. And that's another advantage of the Myr, is we can use the mana from this like on turn 3 or something, or 4, I guess 3. Like turn 3, we can drop the patchwork, maybe drop a couple 1/1s, and it's going to be really huge. And we kind of just like made a massive board in that one turn. So that's sweet. And then yeah, I was talking about the key things the elves need. So elves have the mana ramp, and elves also have the Llanowar Visionary and things like that, which have kind of a smaller body, but they draw you a card. And the reason it doesn't matter is because you have your Lord creatures that pump everyone up. So we got that kind of thing going on here with Malcator's Watcher. It's a 2 mana, 1/1 Flying Vigilance. So still decent stats, to be honest. Flying Vigilance. 1/1 is okay, but for 2 mana, that's probably about on par. And then when it dies, draw a card. So decent body that has evasion, and with your pump creatures, it's going to be swinging in for decent damage. And then if it ever does die, then you draw a card. And you can always use it as a blocker if you want to, if you really want that card. So yeah, pretty sweet. Let's see, what else do we got? So I talked about the lords, I talked about all the other stuff. So I guess the only other creature I didn't mention was Malcator, Purity Overseer. This is just kind of a nice one of we got going on in the deck, because Unctus is legendary. I didn't want to put 4. You might want to put 4, but I'm trying out one Malcator. When it comes into the battlefield, it makes a 3/3 colorless Phyrexian Golem artifact creature. And at the beginning of your end step, if 3 or more artifacts entered the battlefield under your control, then you get a 3/3 artifact creature Golem. So if you played on turn 3, then you're just going to get the 1 Golem. However, turn 4, potentially, you could drop down like maybe a 2/2 and 2 1/1s, something like that, and it's going to generate another Golem for you. That might be hard to pull off, but it's not impossible, so I think it's kind of interesting. Alternatively, if you play Malcator, say on turn 5, and you have 2 1/1s in your hand, then you could get the Golem from Malcator. You could play your 2 1/1s, get 2 more artifacts entered, and then you'll get another Golem from Malcator, because it just says 3 or more artifacts enter the battlefield. Doesn't care about casting. So that's pretty huge. All right, so that's the creature package. A lot of creatures, a lot of artifact synergy going on there. Urza also has a sweet ability that if you get to 6 mana, you can use it to copy a artifact you control. So that's sweet too. Good mana sink. But let's look at what we have to support all these creatures. So the removal spell of choice that I went with is Charge of the Might. It's a little bit weak as a removal, but it synergizes quite well with the deck, so I think it's the right call on this one. 3 mana, instant. Charge of the Might deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. So that on itself is pretty decent. You're going to have a bunch of 1/1s early, as we mentioned. And so maybe you have like 2 creatures lying around, and turn 3, you pass your turn, and they play some creature. You can use this to blow up something, or we can use the second mode, which, let me take a look at that. Create 2 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. So that one is the one we want to use more of the time to go wide, making a decent sized artifact board. As we mentioned, we have all these lords that pump them up, so at the end of the turn you make 2 more of the creatures, and then if you can drop like Urza on turn 4, then you're going to have a bunch of 3/3s or 4/4s or whatever swinging in, doing damage. So that is kind of how elves and stuff like that work in Historic. So same kind of thing going on with this. And then on top of that, there's this instant spell in the new set, Plated Onslaught. So it says 5 mana, 3 and a 2 white, but it has affinity for artifacts. So you can potentially pretty easily reduce this spell to 3 or 2 mana, and creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn at instant speed. So yeah, if you just have 3 creatures on the battlefield, which shouldn't be that hard to do, then you swing in. They try to block it all, you can just blow them out with this. A lot of your creatures have flying too, so maybe they can't block, and you just cast this and win the game. So, seems pretty potent. I didn't want to overdo it and go for all 4 of them. If it's really good, maybe we go all 4. I'm not sure. But starting off with 2, seeing how well it plays out. Affinity is usually pretty strong, and everything here is an artifact, so we'll see. I'm excited about it. All right, the last thing, I had 2 open slots, wasn't sure how to fill out the rest, and then I remembered that Michiko's Reign of Truth is still in Standard, and that card is a house. So I added 2 of those. Again, that one you might want more than 2, but it is an enchantment, so it's not an artifact. However, it says target creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So yeah, that could easily pump like +3, +4, +5 to some creature. And since most of your creatures have flying, that means you're swinging in for like 6 flying damage just off of one of those triggers. And it triggers twice, you know, first turn and then the second turn. So that's a lot of flying damage. It seems like that would be pretty good for kind of like closing out the game, especially. And then when it flips finally at the end to the other side, you still have a creature that's going to be very huge because you have so many artifacts and enchantments on the battlefield. So seems really good. Yeah, again, maybe you want 4 of those. Tough to say, but it's definitely going to be good in this deck for sure. All right, not a whole lot to say for the lands. I am trying out some of the special lands like Plaza of Heroes because we have so many legendary creatures: Urza, Malcator, Skrelv, Unctus. Yeah, I think I got them all there. So that's a lot of legendaries. So we can potentially protect our legendaries with this land. We're also running 2 Mishra's Foundries to have a little bit of reach and like finish off the game if we need to, if we're not drawing our stuff. At least we have this creature land, this man land. And then I took out 2 planes to put in 2 Secluded Courtyard. You could put them back as planes, but since most, like 90% of our creatures are Phyrexian, I thought it might help, especially because we have some blue Phyrexian creatures like Malcator's Watcher, Malcator, Unctus. So it's just to try to make sure we always have the right colors we need for our creatures. But yeah, we'll have to see how it works out if we ever get stuck. In theory, we shouldn't, because we have 4, 8, 12, 14, 15 white sources just off the bat. And then for our creatures, you know, we're going to have 17, 19 white sources, and we're going to have 4, 8, 12, 14, 16 blue sources. So yeah, in theory, should be fine. We got plenty of whites, plenty of blues. The only one that might come in tapped really is the Deserted Beach. So yeah, should be good. It seems pretty sweet, and the deck seems to really come together in this set. So I'm pretty excited for it. Again, it's like a mix between Elves and Affinity in Historic. So if you've played any of those, then this would be right up your alley, and pretty sweet, honestly. I prefer this much more than the Soldiers deck, which is just kind of like your typical aggro deck, pump everything, you know, everything's swinging in for massive damage, blah blah blah. So this one's much cooler. You got the synergies going on, you got the affinity stuff going on. So anyway, let me know what you think. We still got 2 more brews coming up, and honestly, I've brewed so many decks that it's not going to fit in this top 5, but trying to pick 5 of the most interesting ones to show you guys. And yeah, if you're a control fan like me, I have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 Dimir builds that are just like stewing in my brain that I really want to try out. So maybe I'll just have like a final control day at the end where I just dump all the rest of my control builds out there on YouTube. But yeah, let me know what you think. What are you excited for? Please, yeah, share with me what you're wanting to build, what you're looking forward to trying out and stuff like that. And maybe I can build a deck around it. So, yep, that's it for this video. Go out there, have some fun, and until next time, see ya.